When people ask why I started this journey, I honestly don't remember the exact day I decided that I wanted an art shop. What I do remember is in January of 2015 when I convinced myself I was going to be a clay charm maker. It started the way a lot of things start these days, with YouTube. I was watching videos about starting a business in 2025, fell down a rabbit hole, discovered miniature clay charms, and after 2 weeks of research, I somehow convinced myself I could do it. So I talked my husband into buying supplies. To his credit, he was completely supportive. He was just happy I'd found a new hobby and really wanted to encourage it. The problem was that claymaking wasn't really for me. And if I'm being fair, I only gave it a couple of weeks before I quit. At the time, I also had a pretty unhealthy all or nothing mindset. I told myself that if I was going to make clay charms, then I was going to stop drawing completely and fully commit to this new thing. Looking back, that's probably why I burned out so quickly. By the end of those weeks, I missed drawing. I was frustrated with clay making one day and decided to just sketch something for fun. And honestly, I was really happy with what I created. That drawing pulled me right back into art. Now, my relationship with drawing has always been a little complicated. I love creating, but I also tend to focus on everything I'm not good at. Every time I draw, I'm reminded of the skills I still need to learn. I compare what I can create with the stories I want to tell, and the gap between those two things can feel really discouraging. I think a lot about I think a lot of that comes from perfectionism. Even so, I couldn't stay away from art. And somewhere during all of this, I knew I wanted to start a business. At first, I thought maybe I'd sell merchandise based on my characters and stories. But that idea never quite stuck either. Then in March, I found myself watching small business videos again. At the time, I didn't realize it, but looking back, I think God had been guiding me for much longer than I understood. The destination wasn't clear yet, but He kept gently redirecting me whenever I wandered in the wrong direction. There was also another reason I wanted to start a business. My husband and I had been talking about the future, about moving someday, saving money, and building a stronger financial foundation for our family. We weren't struggling, but my husband regularly worked overtime so we could save more. And while he did it willingly, I knew there were parts of his job that made him miserable. One of the reasons I wanted to start a business was because I wanted to help carry some of that burden for him. I wanted to contribute. I wanted him to have more freedom. I wanted him to have less stress. At first, that became my reason, but over time, something changed. The more I walked this path, the more I realized that this wasn't just my idea. I believe God was calling me toward it. I specifically realized this business was from God when I felt no friction, when it felt like an easy choice. Every time I chose to pursue something else, there was always friction, doubt, or a feeling that I was forcing things to happen. Things finally clicked when I prayed about it, when I stopped trying to figure out everything out in my own head and finally asked Him what He wanted me to do. One thing I've learned is that God's path isn't always obvious. Sometimes He reveals it one step at a time. Sometimes He lets us try things that don't work so we can discover what does. And sometimes He uses our failures, frustrations, and detours to guide us back to exactly where we need to be. When I finally committed to this business, I actually started out pretty fearless. But as I dove into the technical details, the stress started layering in. There's so much that goes into starting a business that I was not prepared for. Product development, websites, photography, packaging, marketing, finances. Suddenly, there were 100 things to learn all at once. There are still days when it feels overwhelming, but whenever I start feeling discouraged, I think about my husband and my kids. I think about the future we're trying to build together, and that keeps me going. That doesn't mean God's path is easy. It doesn't mean there won't be uncertainty or challenges, but it does mean we never walk it alone. Isaiah 43:2 says, "When thou passest through the waters, I will be with thee, and through the rivers they shall not overflow thee. When thou walkest through the fire, thou shalt not be burned, neither shall the flame kindle upon thee." To me, that verse means this: God's path is not easy, but He walks with us through it. My walk with the Lord has been far from perfect, and there have been plenty of times when I've struggled, doubted, or lost sight of where He was leading me. But through it all, He has remained faithful. And knowing that He is always with me is one of the greatest comforts I have. That's why I started this journey.